Councilmember Carbasi turned on his camera and waved just a few moments ago.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're good to go then. Council, I want to start off with the special meeting notice that I signed yesterday to consider the recommended expenditure plan for the COVID-19 $92 million. I need a motion and a second to authorize a special meeting.
Motion.
Motion by Member
Council
Chavez,
President.
second by Councilwoman Soria. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bredefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Esparza?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbasi?
Yes.
Councilmember Soria?
Yes.
Council Vice President Caprielio?
Yes.
President Arias?
Yes. All right, Council. Do we have Tim Orman online to present the COVID expenditure plan?
He's trying to get in. He's trying to get in right now.
Okay. All right, we'll wait a couple of seconds here. In the meantime, I will go ahead
Can
and.
you try talking again? I wasn't able to hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Testing.
We can
testing.
hear you.
We can
Can
hear you.
anyone hear Paul, or is it just me?
We can hear Paul.
We can hear him.
Can you hear me now? Testing. Testing.
Yes, I can
Yeah.
hear you.
Thank you. As we wait, Council, for the Mayor's Jail staff to get online, I'll go ahead and take public comment on the draft expenditure plan for COVID-19. At this time, does any member of the public wish to address the council on this item? The item was uploaded to Granicus and it's available for public review. All right, I don't see any member from the public wishing to address the council on this item. We will move on back to see whether we have Tim Orman online yet.
You're looking for
He's
Tim?
logging in
Is-
right now. It should be any minute.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
My apologies for the delay.
No worries.
I think you overslept today.
I don't think he sleeps. He's been so busy.
Well, he's a vampire sometimes, so that might explain.
I can attest to that he's a vampire. Council, can you confirm that you have all received a copy of the expenditure plan? I know it was emailed yesterday.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Council President, are we going to put it on the screen for the public to see?
We can see if we can do that, council member.
Oh, here's Tim.
Yep, he's on. Thanks, Tim.
Council President, what time was it emailed? Because I didn't get an email about that.
It should have been emailed by the city clerk. City clerk, can you confirm that the,
Yeah, I believe it went out early this morning before 8.
Yeah.
It went out just a little bit before 8.
So once again, on this matter, same day, just clarifying. Okay, thank you.
Do we need to send you a copy, council member?
It doesn't matter. I wouldn't have enough time to review it anyways. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I would like you to send it to me, please.
Okay,
I can send it to all council members.
Thank you.
thank you, Brianna.
all right, Tim, vampire is now online. Tim, can you go ahead and address the council with, we can't hear you, Tim. You have to unmute yourself before you.
I don't think we want to know what he said.
I said, just for the record, my first Zoom meeting was at 7:30 this morning. So once again, your facts are incorrect.
Oh.
Well, the claim, Tim, was that you're a vampire, so I think that's arguable that we might be right still. With
Okay,
that,
I'm not going to argue with that. I'm arguing with the oversleeping comment.
okay. With that, Tim, can you go ahead and provide the council an overview? Some council members didn't receive the document to this early this morning, so please give us an overview of the draft expenditure plan for the COVID-19.
Absolutely. This is an update to the plan we presented to council on June 11th in working with various council members. We just go through the guiding principle. Number one is to ensure that safety, services, public comment and input, which is occurred during this. They may have different opinions on this what to move forward with through the for our residents, which means keeping the city employees on payroll to provide those services. Funding programs that reduce the economic burden on residences and businesses from COVID-19. Identifying and funding opportunities for ongoing improvements that benefit the community. And then the new one we added is that we're investing at least a third of this money in eligible programs to help underserved communities in Southwest and Southeast Fresno. I would argue that when you look at the plan, it's probably more than half, maybe even 2/3 of the money is going to end up in those areas as the plan goes forward. With that, out of the $92.7 million, we're recommending call it $45.5 million in community investment, starting with $10 million for 2 health clinics, one in Southeast Fresno and one in Southwest Fresno. $5 million for 3 mobile testing centers through University of California at San Francisco, which you guys approved recently. Another $5 million to further expand testing and contract tracing capability, primarily Southeast, Southwest Fresno, I think almost exclusively actually. Another $5 million for residential housing retention grants for people that are struggling to pay the rent because they aren't working because of the economic downturn, the high unemployment rate. We've got $1.5 million in progress. This gives us the ability to add $3.5 million to that through the end of the year. $4.5 million for homeless transitional housing, where the city would purchase between 100 and 200 existing hotel rooms for use by the homeless during COVID. And then after we're through COVID, we can rehabilitate these using CDBG or other funds to make it permanent transitional housing for homeless, which adds to our capability to get people off the street and prepare them for safe exits to permanent housing. There's also $4 million to upgrade and rehabilitate parks and community centers. Again, I see, given the conditions, that the majority of this money, probably 75%, if not more, is going to be in Southeast and Southwest Fresno. There's also $4 million for Save Our Small Business grants. That counts the $750,000 we did initially. The $2 million will be going out the door this week or next week, and leaves open another $1.25 million between now and the end of the year for additional grants. There's also $2.4 million, roughly a little bit under that, for childcare vouchers for essential workers and vulnerable populations. This is a program Councilmember Esparza and I have been working on with the Central Valley Children's Services Network. It's income qualified, so these are essential workers that couldn't otherwise afford the childcare that they need in order to be able to perform their essential tasks. And then the 2 things we've already approved: the $500,000 for the micro farmers to donate, to harvest their crops and donate it to food banks, and the $110,000 we're doing with EDC to educate businesses. So that's the 45.5 million community investment. I would argue in some respects, it's entirely community investment when you look at where the $92.8 million actually goes. Within this, we're also proposing $9.25 million in city expenditures, retrofitting City Hall, $4.25 million, and also other city buildings to make them safer going forward in a COVID-19 environment. $2 million to expand and improve our teleworking capability to allow our city employees to telework and provide excellent customer service to our residents. $1 million for personal protective equipment, much of which we probably spent 300,000 or 400,000 of that so far. So this would cover us through the end of the year. And there's $1 million for money departments have spent already on COVID-19 related expenditures, another $1 million for those qualifying expenditures that are not within these other pots of money between now and the end of the year. That's the 9.25 million in city related expenditures, which also benefit our residents since we serve them. Number 3 is preservation of essential city services for residents. What that includes is the 25 million in citywide salaries that is programmed in the budget you guys are hopefully going to adopt later on this morning, which 9 million in this fiscal year and 16 million in the next fiscal year. And then it puts the remaining balance of a little over $13 million in a contingency fund. We're hoping to know in July whether the federal government will allow additional flexibility on CARES Act, whether it's revenue replacement or whatever flexibility they need to program this money into additional community investment between now and December 30th so that we meet the requirements of the CARES Act. So that's the overview. Be glad to answer any questions anybody has on the subject.
Council President.
Council Vice President.
Council President.
Yes, you have the floor, Council Vice President.
Thank you very much. Tim, I have a question on the funding here. Were the locations, when you say southeast Fresno, that seems to be me, and I'm thinking of areas around the university. So would that be like Barstow South? Because there's a lot of students that have some needs, especially with the mobile testing and stuff like that. Is this going to be based on PD quadrants, or just can you define southeast, southwest? That's my first question. I have a second one.
I think most people see the dividing line as Shaw, and we're looking south of Shaw. I think in this situation, in some cases, it would be south of Herndon. I think where the university is, because you've got a lot of students there, we would certainly look at that to be included where we can.
And with that also, based upon what you said, I think that would include CDBG areas like in District 4 with our parks and families struggling with COVID-19.
Luis says it's there. It's a little more.
They would be considered impoverished areas, I believe.
Yeah, I would think that would happen too. What adoption of this program does, and I probably should have said this at the beginning, is it gives us the framework. It identifies the pots of money and where they go. Our next step, and the importance of adopting this, is because then that allows us to go to the next step, to go into detail to planning how and where this money is going to be spent. And we will bring it back to you guys as we develop the details on each particular pot of money. So we've already started on the administration side to alert the respective departments to start looking at this and making their recommendations to us so that we can bring them to you.
I think we're all going to be have areas of great need, like El Dorado, Sierra Madre, the Fountain, Cedar neighborhoods. I could go on and on. So my point is this: everybody has areas that are at various levels of a need, including my district. So I'm hoping that the process will spread over the areas and not just go into one area as heavily as possible, while the others still struggle. So I'm hoping there's some fairness and equality in distribution of the funds in those particular areas. Is that a realistic thought on my part for my District 4 residents?
Do you want to ask that question, Esmeralda?
I just want to, and I understand the vice president's concern. I'm just going to chime in real quick. I think in coming up with the strategic plan, there were some of us that were involved and had significant input. As you remember, Council Vice President, earlier in the week, Councilmember Bredefeld and Carbasi noted that there are communities in Southeast Fresno and Southwest Fresno, and we're talking about South, like, way south of Shaw, that have been disproportionately impacted by poverty, by the lack of resources in terms of even like healthcare. And so kind of in light of, I believe, what I've seen on the council in terms of support and a desire to invest in those neighborhoods that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, we have to make those policy calls. And your district and my district may get some, but we may not get as much as Southwest Fresno, where their numbers are skyrocketing, and in Southeast as well, where the testing hasn't been as robust as in other areas of the city. And I think that's
I understand that, council person. But again, everybody that can be spread thick or thin, and I'm asking that it be spread fairly and not too thick in one area as opposed to others. So I understand the difference in needs, but every single district, including mine, and I'll take you to some areas that we went distributing Christmas presents, and Member Bredefeld and he was extremely uncomfortable in these areas. So we all have that. So I'm just saying, let's spread across the Southeast, Southwest as fairly as possible. Everybody has needs. I would expect that. If that doesn't occur, then I won't be able to support some of these items, because fairness is paramount to me.
Council Vice President, if I could just chime in, I think a good indicator of the spending plan and what will guide a lot was some of the information that we've requested the county, particularly, the COVID cases that have been registered by zip code. I think that will help the council in the future make some very strategic decisions. And, just as a reminder, this money was intended to mitigate the COVID impact on the city of Fresno. We know that certain parts of the city have been hit hard. The last time the county released a zip code map was, I believe, 2 weeks ago, and you saw those bright red zip codes in Southwest and Southeast Fresno. And so that'll be very helpful as we go forward. When the county gives us that information, we can strategically deploy these resources. So again, these are buckets of money that we're using that were intended for COVID mitigation. And I think that data will outline how we spend these dollars, obviously with understanding that we know that right now there are a lot of hotspots in Southwest and Southeast Fresno, like Southwest, Southeast Fresno. And so I just wanted to put that on there just for your consideration too.
I appreciate that. I think my point is well made, and I don't want to continue along beating a dead horse, as they say, because I think it's fairly clear where I am, and I expect everyone to have that opinion, because everyone has council constituents, district constituents that look to us for this type of leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Vice President. The next folks who have identified themselves to speak is Councilwoman Soria, Bredefeld, Esparza, and then Member Carbasi.
Thank you, Council President. Just wanted to make 2 points. One, on a couple weeks ago, we did support allocating about 100,000, Tim. So I don't know where this is in the bucket, because it's not like explicit, for businesses that want to expand their eating areas, given kind of the social distancing. So we did miss that. I just wanted to make note. I don't know where we're going to include it, but I know that it was supported and approved by this council. Additionally, I did want to bring up and see if we can include this as part of the strategic plan I totally missed it before, but I know that it was included previously. There's been a couple of local some of them have been vandalized as a result of there not being activity at their places. And so some are like, I think, doing a GoFundMe or things like that to try to help them raise some funds. So I'd like to see if we can either include them. I don't know if it's appropriate under the parks version or to be able to provide these nonprofits the assistance. Arts and culture are a big part of our community. And, you know, they benefit our local economy. So if the administration is willing to include that again, I know that it was included in the previous plan to modify it. Tim?
Councilwoman, it's my understanding that the arts and cultures are still included in the current proposal under the park section. I don't know if it's explicit, but it should have continued on there. Tim?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's my feeling on it too, Esmeralda.
Okay, so if that could be made explicitly edited so that folks understand that they'll be able to access some resources.
Councilmember, can we open that to all nonprofits, not just ones in arts, because we're talking about federal money, and I just think it needs to be equitable across the board.
So I don't know if necessarily we need to open it up to all nonprofits. In my opinion, a lot of these dollars are actually going to CBOs, which are the ones that are running like the programs, like for example, the Farm to Table, that's ABERC doing it. It's a nonprofit. The housing retention grants, we have 6 nonprofits that are running because they're servicing their clients so that they're getting a chunk of this. Also, I'm trying to think of what other, and then the healthcare resources are also, we're partnering with a lot of the local CBOs to be able to do a lot of this work. So in fact, a lot of the funds that are there are going to be allocated to our CBOs, unless there is something that I'm missing, Councilmember Carbasi.
No, you make a good point. A lot of these facilities, they are closed, and unfortunately they're susceptible to vandalism, or just because they're closed, they don't have income coming in, property does dilapidate. And that's a good point. I'm just saying if we can open it up to other nonprofits as well that have the same problem.
Do you know of other nonprofits? And I'm open to it. I don't know where the administration is at, but I don't know what other nonprofits haven't been closed the entire time.
Allow me to try and bring some closure to this point. This plan does not exclude any specific nonprofit from receiving the resources as long as they're providing the services in the buckets that the plan identifies. So if that's the concern, then I don't think, I think it's addressed. Right, Tim? This doesn't exclude any organization.
No, it doesn't.
As long as they're providing services in those areas, and they can apply.
What I'd recommend, Councilmember Carbasi, is bring the particular ones of concern to our attention. Let us talk to them and figure out how we can help them through this framework. Like I said earlier, this is basically a framework to help us identify areas so that we can actually go forward and make these decisions and get this money spent by December 30th.
Council, before we proceed with the additional questions, Councilwoman Soria, I know you still have the floor. Can we get a motion to approve the plan before we proceed further?
I'll make a motion to approve with those clarifications I suggested.
I do have one modification before we
okay
all together.
All right, let me just accept that second from Councilmember Chavez, and I'm sure we'll take any amendments. Councilmember Soria, are you done?
I just wanted to add one more comment on the bucket for the healthcare, the healthcare resources. I just wanted to make sure, I know that there's a number of youth organizations that have been asking for some support dollars to do youth mental health, a mental health project between now and then the end of the year. Well, did we put aside, I think we had mentioned maybe up to $300,000 through the end of the year to help increase mental health services? I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that's part of it. Perfect.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so those are all my comments and clarifications. Thank you, and appreciate everyone's work on this.
All right, Councilman
Is everybody, could I just ask a clarifying question, Council President? Are you comfortable, Councilwoman Soria, if we put the 100,000 for the outdoor dining in the Save Our Small Business bucket?
Yes.
Fine, I just wanted to make sure that we.
Your voice changed.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
With that, Councilmember Butterfield has the floor, followed by Councilmember Esparza, and then Carbasi.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I want to echo what Councilmember Carbasi said. We get this just a short time before council to discuss. I'm looking at the changes. There are a lot of changes from what was given to us before. We had community investment on the prior plan of $27 million. We put it at 46. I noticed quickly arts and culture that you had before of $2 million has been removed. 2 thumbs up. It didn't belong there to begin with. Now you went from food assistance from 1 million to 5 million. Save Our Small Business grants, I think went down from 8 million to 4 million. So there's a decrease. The child care vouchers went up 1.5 million. I point this out to make the point that you have a lot of people who have had input into this, except 4 council members who have to vote on this. There are 3 who I guess are engaged. You have tons of city staff, but I'm not involved, and I get this a brief time before I'm supposed to make some decisions and know what the heck I'm talking about. And I need more time than 20 minutes before a meeting to figure out what is being done, what changes are being made. This has got to stop. You need to give us more information. It needs to come to us quicker, because I can't make these decisions on the fly. We're talking about millions, tens of millions of dollars. So this has got to stop. As for the $30 million, and we made them at least 30 million spent in Southeast, Southwest Fresno. Again, I want to remind everybody, we have to have contracts in place or money expended before December 31st. Now, I made a number of comments in terms of Nexus related to what I think are tremendous needs in Southwest and Southeast Fresno, from infrastructure to people not being able to get healthy foods because they don't even have a major retail grocery store there, which all has an impact on health and lack of being healthy, which leads people to be susceptible to disease, COVID-19, and other diseases. And none of that is in here. None of the Nexus, well, I won't say none, but many of the things that I discussed are not in here. The concept of Principle 9, invest at least 1/3 in eligible programs to help underserved communities in Southwest and Southeast Fresno, related to COVID-19. There's a passing mention of it. So I don't think it's accurately reflected in terms of what this council did on a 6-0 vote last week, which is to invest at least $20 million, and it was above the $27 million on your original plan. Your original plan was $27 million community investment. And we said we want to invest at least 30 million in those programs that we outlined the week before. This has gone up to 46 million. So you have your program of 27 million. There's some added. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we need to do what we had talked about and what the council made the motion to do last week. I know that Councilmember Chavez is working diligently on looking at ways that he can spend the money. I know with what's happened with your family, that may not be happening as quickly, Miguel, because of what obviously priorities that take place. But we've got to get this focused, and we've got to get this spent, and we've got to get contracts under place and determinations of how this money is going to be spent. And so I just raised that because we do have a very serious timeline here, 6 months to spend significant money in Southwest and Southeast Fresno.
Thank you, Councilmember Butterfield. And I have Councilmember Punchstub to respond to your comments, I think.
Who's next, Council President?
You are Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I just want to give some perspective. Yeah, Councilmember Butterfield is right. We voted 6-0 last time to kind of outline this plan. one of the biggest challenges that we have had to work through is on making sure that all these expenses that we have are eligible. I think the last thing we want to have is for the city to incur millions of dollars in costs, and then we find out that the expenses are not reimbursable or not eligible, and then we're on the hook with the general fund. So I just want to put that on the table. That's one of the factors that went into the decision-making process that we have here. The other challenge that we got to be cognizant of is we need to make sure that the expenses that we incur and have are able to be expended by December 31st of this year. And based on the framework that we provided, this was the best and easiest and more strategic way of mitigating a lot of the COVID impact that we've had. So definitely appreciate it. And just for some perspective, you know, Councilmember Bredefeld and Carbasi, we completely appreciate what you guys did last week. And, you know, you flagged some of the investments that we sat with legal counsel, we sat with the mayor's office and asked what that would look like for Southeast, for Southwest. And this was the framework that we came up with. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation that still needs to happen, but we wanted to identify some buckets of areas that you see on here with regards to small businesses, rental housing assistance, you know, the food distribution piece. And you're right, Councilmember Bredefeld, that amount went up. And the reason for that is we know that those communities have been hit hard. And the rationale behind that was doing at least $1 million each for food distributions. We had a number of food distributions where there have been long waiting lines. There were some folks that did not get some food. So that was the reason for some of the changes and modifications that you saw. And with regards to the infrastructure investments, we know that those are very difficult to complete in the span of 3-4 months. But that doesn't mean that we can't have that conversation in, you know, a couple of months when we'll get a little bit clearer numbers on the returns that we're having for the city budget overall. But we felt that this was the best and quickest way to strategically mitigate the COVID expenditure. And again, we definitely appreciate, you know, yourself and Councilmember Carbasi identifying the 30 million. I think we're at the point now where we're trying to find what does that specifically look like? And this is obviously what we came up with, but I'm open to conversation, to, you know, suggestions on how we can improve this.
Yeah, and let me just respond, Councilmember Chavez. I'm not being critical of adding money or not adding money. I mean, we've got to do that. The only thing that for me is, one, I share the concern about, you know, meeting deadlines so we don't lose this money, and people being involved in terms of providing input. What is the best way to do this? And I know we've got the nexus issues. They're very clear. Nobody wants to spend money and then have the government come back and say, you've got to give us back the money. But, you know, and my frustration, and it's not anything with you, it's just getting this shortly, and then we have to make decisions and vote on a plan, and perhaps do it today. I don't know. And haven't had any time to really analyze, discuss, converse, dialogue, debate, agree, disagree, none of that. And so that's a problem for me as somebody who is responsible to vote on this. And that's my only concern.
No, absolutely. Totally understand. And I agree. And, you know, I'm not a fan of getting things last minute, but again, this is kind of the template that we're working off of. Every single item that's listed on here will eventually have to come back to the council for a contract or agreement approval. And I think each individual item will be scrutinized on its merits and on its, you know, fiscal impact. So we'll have plenty of opportunities to debate and discuss this. This was just kind of some buckets identified of some investments that we're making, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my apologies for last minute. We weren't able to, Mayor and I were not able to meet with the council subcommittee that we've been talking to until yesterday afternoon to finalize this framework. And I don't know another way to do this and not violate the Brown Act. So my apologies for the last minute.
For confirming that it's your fault again. We appreciate
Ralph Brown's fault.
But to Councilmember Bredefeld's point, I do want to honor his concerns and Member Carbasi's too. Not only are we working overtime and we had to have a last minute, you know, disruptive kind of experience with going from in the building to remotely for most of us. But this plan does, Councilmember Bredefeld and Carbasi, honor your motion for at least $30 million in the southern part of the city. If I can just walk you through some of the ways that we're going to get there. So, for example, the first item of $10 million for clinics, we know that the long-term challenges in South Fresno have been a lack of medical facilities. So we're proposing that $10 million go to establishing 2 new clinics, one in Southeast and one in Southwest. The additional testing and health screenings that we know are needed are included here, as well as expanding the contact tracing with an additional $5 million that we know is going to go to the areas who currently lack sufficient testing and tracing. The housing grants, the food assistance, as Councilmember Chavez pointed out, what we looked at is that we essentially have 5 months, and we anticipate that there'll be $1 million per month needed for food distribution alone in the areas that we've identified. So we will get you a follow-up communication that breaks down how we anticipate getting to at least $30 million in Southwest and Southeast. And of course, all these will come in the form of a contract. So we'll confirm at that point what the exact number is, because we might suggest, 4.5 million for housing at this point, but it might come back that we only have to spend $3.5 million for the housing. And then we can then readjust where we spend that additional money and how we spread it across the city. So there was some reductions, specifically around the small business grants. We know that we just did a second round, and we also know that staff is overwhelmed with the amount of work that they're trying to get the money out. So we wanted to be cautious about just putting $5 million more and completely overwhelming staff, instead of saying, okay, let's do another round of 1.2 million. And if as money is drawn down, we'll put some more money into that bucket. So, and those are all conversations that the council committee will have and report to the full council, and ask the council to adopt the action. So some of this work is been quite exhausting, to be frank with you, on trying to get everything in place. But this is the framework that we're proposing. It's not the exact amount for each bucket, and it's not deployed in an exact way. That will come in the form of a contract that we anticipate we'll have to have some special meetings to approve to give everybody sufficient time, given that we only have a couple of meetings in July, and we're trying to get this money out so that the folks have time to distribute the money to our residents. But with that, I'll go to Councilmember Butterfield. You still have the floor, and then Councilmember Esparza.
No, I'm fine, thank you, and I appreciate your comments, both you and Councilmember Chavez. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Esparza, you have the floor.
Yeah, so we've been working with the mayor's chief of staff on the childcare portion. So it looks like we have pretty much a solid plan with a lot of help from our friends over at the Children's Services Network, as well as Cradles of Career and FCSS. So they might want to chime in, but I do want to move that in addition to the actual dollars here that we're going to allocate to the childcare portion, which is about 2.4 million roughly, I want to make a motion that the administration moves forward with developing the childcare vouchers for essential workers program, and that they bring back the solid agreement at the next city council meeting.
Second.
Okay, we'll accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion to approve.
Sounds good.
We'll be ready.
Is that it?
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Carbasi, you have the floor.
Thanks. I feel like it's a little bit of deja vu, because the last time we addressed this important issue, this COVID relief money, which is a once in a lifetime opportunity to have a real impact in our community and protect us from a second wave or this happening again, there was an apology, and clearly nothing's changed. Now, I have a question, though, for the subcommittee. Did the administration request to meet with you when you put them off, and that's why this is being done last minute?
Member
Because what I'm being
Carbasi,
told now it's because you guys didn't meet with them early enough.
Member Carbasi, if your question is, did the subcommittee delay meeting with the administration? The answer is no. We met as soon as our schedules were available, given that we had a long budget hearing on Thursday.
So then my question is, this general framework that we're looking at now, when was this prepared, or at least the bulk of it? Was it this morning? Was it last night? Or was it before? Because just, a general heads up would have been good. And we don't have to violate the Brown Act doing that. It's just pretty frustrating, because I do take my job seriously. I know we all do. This is $90 million, and Councilmember Rutherford and I made a very bold proposal. And part of that was to encourage us to push the envelope like other communities. I don't see anything in here about broadband access. Mesa, Arizona, and Chicago, Illinois have pushed that. We talk about our kids, whether they're going to be in school or out of school. And part of the pressure, I think, to stay in school is the issue of the ability to actually have access to the internet to have distance learning. And we can solve our COVID problem with that and the inequity of access, but we can also have a long-term lasting impact. I love the idea of the health clinics. I think it's a great, great plan because not only does it help today, it helps in the future as well. But Councilman Bredefeld's point about a grocery store, look, we can give $5 million to give food to people. That's fine. But what happens when this all runs out and people need access, whether it's using their own money from their job or SNAP or CalFresh to purchase quality food? They shouldn't have to drive so far to do that. This is something that we need to solve. And again, I think we need to push the envelope. I have to say, if the federal government in an election year wants to come in and take that money away from us, bring it on. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I just have a couple of questions here. Is there a plan for the 13 million? Let's say the government doesn't come through with an act for revenue replacement. Are we gonna? Can we get like about October 1st? Could we get kind of a update and a plan if that doesn't go through? That way we can spend that money appropriately.
Tim, do you want to respond?
Yes, I think we're going to know the answer to that by the end of July, council member.
Okay.
So at that point, we start the planning process. To answer your previous question, we met with the council subcommittee for the first time a week ago Tuesday, laid out the broad outlines, and then it was a matter of getting that to where we are today, which wasn't finished until yesterday afternoon. So it wasn't delay on either party's process. It's not a simple process to go through this.
And I agree it's not simple. My question for you is, why do you think it's appropriate to give all 7 of us a plan that calls for $90 million in spending, which is significant, and then expect us within a couple hours or an hour to be able to review it and not have time to ask staff questions and just go and vote on it? That's my concern. And I said this last time, I got an apology and nothing changed. So I just want to understand how things work in this building.
Council member, if I may, let me recognize the mayor. I know he has his hand up, and I will tell you, council member, from our end, we finished a plan at 5:55 in the evening yesterday. I asked our city clerk to send it over to you, but as you know, after hours are difficult to get a hold of people, and they send it as soon as possible. So
now we're blaming the clerk. So we're doing ping pong back and forth. I mean, that's fine.
I will accept responsibility, Councilmember Carbasi, for not getting it directly to all of you guys yet last night when it was ready. With that, Mayor, would you like to address the council?
President, remind everybody how unprecedented the situation is right now. With a pandemic, once in 100 years, $92 million, and a lot of decisions to make, and a situation that's so fluid, they literally changed the rules day by day. That's what we've all been working under the past 3 months. And this was really, I wish the meeting would have been done earlier. Had it not been June 30th, it would be probably less of a rush, but it is what it is. We had to work within those timelines. And as the council president said, this was not really completed till 5 o'clock this afternoon, but I'll be redundant, but the main thing here is we got to spend this on COVID-related expenses. We want it authorized. We can't risk spending $10 or $20 million that gets accepted and would be a catastrophe to the general fund. We put up a general framework that has flexibility within it, and we're trying to address, the specific area, southeast, southwest. And what I'm concerned about is in a very unpredictable pandemic and virus, is if we get through the summer, I'm hoping with no more closures, we can continue opening businesses. But if there's another spike in the fall, October, November, based on what the 1918 pandemic did, we could all be in serious shape, serious bad shape, that I want to make sure we have the capability. And I think that's shared with my council colleagues, testing, tracing, all the things we need to be effective. If it comes up again to kill it, because this city cannot go through another shelter at home place. It would be a disaster. It would destroy this economy. We've got to do everything we can. That's our responsibility as city leaders, to find the plan. This is I think it's the way it's structured right now. The framework is addressing the cogent issues out there. But the second part will be the budget, which we'll discuss next. So sorry the way this came across, but and even now, as we talk about, we need to make sure that the council works on a full-time basis between now and December 30th to make sure this money's spent. We don't want to send any money back. And on your question, Mike, on the $13 million, I think by October 1st, we'll know that. We can develop a plan very rapidly. If we're not going to get it, we'll spend it in the most strategic and best use of the money. Thank you.
Councilmember Carbasi, if I could offer, from now until December 9th, I'll commit to having staff provide the council a monthly report on the status of the plan itself, what contracts are coming forward, what was the thinking, where we stand with each of the buckets that are identified, and if we need to readjust the buckets or find out that the 13 million is not flexible, we'll bring you a plan as soon as we get notice of federal government.
I appreciate
Council
that.
President.
Yes, Council
Council
President.
President. Pardon me for interrupting. I think each of us would like that document and documentation as it ongoes through this process. I certainly want to make sure I have a copy so I can review it in light of as I related earlier, the needs of District 4 as well. So please, Council President, include me in that documentation.
Yes, I'm speaking specifically as an update to the full council. So.
No, I do appreciate that. That's a step in the right direction. Finally, it's just this is such an important thing that we're doing, and this is some of these things in this plan are just terrific. It's going to make a real big difference in our community, and nobody wants to vote against that. We just have to ensure this is the best it can be. Look, each one of us, 7 of us, were elected in our respective districts. We all went through that process, and we all have an equal seat at the table. The issue is 4 council members have had input in this process. The subcommittee and then Councilman Esparza, with his great plan, provide childcare to our essential workers, and I think that's important. But if you don't include the other council members in this process, it's not going to be representative of this city. Councilmember Bredefeld and I said we want a majority invested in Southeast and Southwest Fresno, but we also said we want the envelope pushed and we want to do more to make sure there's lasting effects. So that's why I have a little bit of a reservation, but I appreciate the input from the mayor and the council president moving forward. Now, just for clarification, is this due by June 30th, like the budget? I know time is of the essence, but does this have a deadline?
Yes, our goal is that the reason we're hearing this item before the budget is if the council wishes to make changes, especially to the $38 million of expected, revenue replacement or any other lines. I think the $9 million expected from city services. All that those cuts would have to be identified in the budget adoption process of the next item. So yes, the short answer is yes, this plan anticipates some of the money going towards closing the budget gap that we identified of $30 million. Correct, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, good to know.
25 million of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have a question just for legal counsel. Just to clarify, who do we have here today?
Are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. So just for clarification, if at any time the council wishes to vote and change this plan, we have the authority to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And just to add to that, Councilmember Carbasi, when we bring the contracts forward that represent these buckets, if the council wishes not to approve them, then at that point can also deny those proposals.
Oh, you remind me of something, Council President. So one thing that I understand we got to balance everything. I think that we had over $7 million in requests for the Save Our Small Business grant money. And I think the program's really done a great job. I thought it would have been, what's that? Oh. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to allocate more money for our minority-owned and Black-owned businesses, especially those in the South, because this is a revenue source for our city and to protect that investment. I'm not happy that money's gone down, but I understand there's a lot of other priorities, especially with healthcare, that's very pressing. So with that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carbasi. The last point I'd like to make to you, Councilman Carbasi, is I took to heart your guys' proposal for things like grocery stores, just kind of specific to Southwest. Part of the TCC proposal we're working on is to establish a grocery store in the region. So as we develop these resources, we're going to look to leverage some of those existing projects and see if we can get that permanent grocery store outcome that we want by leveraging the existing projects that we have, including some of the COVID resources. So it won't be fully funded by COVID, but our hope is that collectively we'll get to that common goal of addressing the permanent shortfall of a grocery store. All right, I have Councilmember Brett punched up.
Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned about 5 million is covering the shortfall. Where are you getting that?
I said 25 million. It's
25
in the, yeah, there's 9 million and I think it's
from
described
salary?
as salary offsets. Yes.
Okay, so it's reimbursing out of COVID as opposed to general fund for the salaries of people who are responding to COVID.
Yes. Citywide. Police, fire, code.
Okay, thank you.
Administration. Yes.
All right, Councilmember Vice President Capriolio, I think you're punched up.
Thank you. Thank you. Two questions. One, excuse me, I'm a little under the weather as usual, but I'll get through this. To follow up on Councilmember Carbasi's question, so a vote will change this. What is the vote count? In other words, is it 4 or 5?
It's 4 votes. It's not a budget vote.
Okay, and I just want to put it on the record. And then the council subcommittee members are?
Councilmember Soria, Arias, and Chavez.
And then the next question is, can these funds be used to employ additional staff so we can make sure we hit our marks and expend all this money properly by December 31st? Or do we need to add staff from the general fund to facilitate the expenditure of all the money in my book? Is that possible, or how does that fit into
Council
the
Vice
equation?
President, either option is available from my understanding. The city can reimburse itself for staff's time that are working to implement this proposal, or it can hire temporary staff to help implement the proposal through either subcontracts or through temporary staff. Is that correct, Tim?
I think so, but I would want to hear from Mike Lima and Raj on that.
Yeah, let's make sure we hear from the guys in charge of the money.
Good morning, Council. Mike Lima, Finance Director. Hiring individuals to address the COVID pandemic is a eligible expense for reimbursement under CARES guidelines. With existing staff, it's a little more challenging in that the person has to be fully dedicated over to that particular item, over to COVID. So, for instance, if I have an accountant that's working in my office and they're doing accounting work, if they only do CARES part-time, that's not eligible. If they're shifted fully over to that, then that would be eligible. So it's a little tougher with existing staff, but hiring staff to assist is something that is permissible.
So with that in mind, it seems like we should be seriously considering outside sources that can step in and help, since that seems to be COVID-19 qualifiable, and that would facilitate the goals that this entire council has of helping the city of Fresno overcome this pandemic.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Are you done?
Did you hear my last comment?
Yes.
All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll now go to roll call vote for this item, and then we'll move on to the budget adoption.
Councilmember Bredefeld? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, proceed.
Okay. Councilmember Bredefeld? Okay. Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Esparza?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbasi?
Yes.
Councilmember Soria?
Yes.
Council Vice President Capriolio?
Yes.
President Arias?
Yes.
6-0.